Hey everyone, it's Ed Gutowski here. What I wanted to do was create a short video that might help you with the appointment in Samara. Because sometimes when I teach in a ground class, students have had some problems with the appointment in Samara. So I thought this short video, which I'm going to try to make hopefully just a little bit shorter than 5 minutes, to kind of help you if you've had problems understanding the fable. So the one thing that we do know is that, right, a fable is a really, really short story, right? If you look at the appointment in Samara, it's not any longer than a paragraph in length, but I think there's a lot to this story. So it's also a great way to look at and analyze a work with regards to themes. So when I teach the appointment in Samara in a ground class, I usually ask students two questions. First, I ask the students how many thought the story was funny. And about half the class will raise their hand and kind of chuckle. And then the second thing I do is I ask how many students didn't understand the story. And about half the class raises their hands and admits they were confused by the story. So if that's the case, this video is for you, and you're not alone if you kind of struggled with it briefly. So when I introduce you, when I talk about the appointment in Samara, the first thing we have to set up is, so what happens in the story? So we know if we look at the story, I ask where's it set, and we know that the story is set in Iraq, specifically in Baghdad. And I imagine if we kind of zoom down from the heavens, we zoom down into Iraq and we zoom down into Baghdad, there we are in this crowded market. And I think, like, look, if we are in a crowded market in Baghdad, just imagine all the amazing and kind of crazy things you'd see. And then we have the servant, and he's walking around in this market, he's bumping into people, and he turns the corner and he sees death. And death comes and raises the pointed hand at the servant, and the servant freaks out and runs back to his master's house, takes a horse, and trots all the way to the city in Samara. Well, the master hears about this, and he's furious. He's pissed off. So he walks back into the market, and he goes back to the market, and he's pushing people out of the way, and he turns the corner, he sees Death, and he gets right in Death's face, and he says, "What's up, Death? Why were you making fun of my servant? Why were you mocking him?" And Death says, "I wasn't mocking him. I was surprised to see him because I have an appointment with him in Samara later in the day." So you always point out students who thought this was funny, you guys have a sick, twisted sense of humor because the poor servant's going to die at the end of the story. And so notice that you can kind of look at the appointment in Samara, and there are some really simple and easy themes that you can kind of pick about. You can pick about fate. You can't escape death, right? And those are really easy themes. But if we look deeper into the story, there's more going on here, because if we look at the appointment in Samara, there's something we notice about death. Death is a woman. And once we establish that Death is a woman, the story becomes much more interesting and raises some other interesting points, because I think if you look at it from a Western standard, our image of Death is that, Death is the hooded figure that with, it's a skeleton, it carries a scythe, right? But by making Death a woman, I think it changes everything. And if you think about it, it kind of makes sense that Death is a woman, because every one of us is born from a woman. So why wouldn't Death then be a woman? I think it kind of surprises people. And then if you look at where the story is set, we think about in Baghdad, think about in the Middle East, oftentimes in Middle East cultures, women are treated very poorly. Sometimes they're treated worse than second-class citizens. So there's something ironic here about Death being a woman, because it kind of makes a great commentary on cultures that sort of don't view women as equal or in a positive light. Now, I also like the idea that one of the themes could be, fear of death, don't be afraid of death. Maybe the servant is afraid of women, don't be afraid of women as well. But, I've had some really interesting themes that have come out. And so this is why I like it when you're analyzing a theme, try to go big and go big and interesting in your themes. Because I one time taught this fable, and this was years ago, probably 10, 15 years ago, but I had a student who had served in Iraq during the War on Terror, and he said, "I think this poem is about, or the story is about the invasion in Iraq." And I said, "Well, how did you come to that conclusion?" And he said, if you think about it, he had served in Iraq, he had lost some friends when he had served in Iraq, and initially, the invasion in Iraq went fairly smoothly, went fairly easily. The U.S. easily occupied Baghdad, and everyone thought, well, this was going to be a quick and easy war. But it wasn't until about 6 months after we were in Baghdad and everyone thought things were going to be easy, that terrorists blew up this beautiful temple. It's a beautiful church in Samara, and they blew it up. And it was when that temple blew up in Samara that we realized, holy cow, this wasn't going to be an easy fight. This was going to be a long, hard war. So while that student kind of came up with a really unique thesis that the story was about, the U.S. invasion in Iraq, and you can have some questions with it, it's much more interesting than saying a theme is, fate, you can't cheat death, you can't escape fate. So sometimes when you're thinking of themes, go big and go bold and see where your ideas take you, because they can make it rather interesting. So I hope this short video helped you out, and it sort of got you to take away a better appreciation of the story. And we'll just continue reading some things and see where we go from there.